Good evening, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board, January 18, 2024. I'm Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the planning board. With me tonight is the vice chair, Amelia Aboff, as well as members Michael McNeely, Debbie Howard Easton, and Luke Schuster. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the planning board will be conducted via remote participation. The video recording of these proceedings will be available on the city website or by emailing planning@somervillema.gov. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight, only one of which involves a case. The rest are kind of administrative business and other business, and that case has actually requested a continuance. So the 620 Broadway applicant has requested a continuance to February 1st. Is that right?
This is Raisa speaking. That is correct.
Okay. Chair moves to continue 620 Broadway to the February 1st meeting, seconded by Amelia. We have a roll call vote, please.
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
That item is continued. The other items on our agenda are the approval of meeting minutes and then a matter of general discussion by the board of other business. I'll do the minutes first. Has everybody had a chance to review the 12/7/2023 draft meeting minutes? Does anybody have any suggested revisions to those? Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the 12/7/23 draft meeting minutes as the planning board's minutes, seconded by Amelia. We have a roll call vote, please.
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Great. We have meeting minutes for 12/7. 12/21/2023 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any suggested revisions? Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the draft meeting minutes of 12/21/23. Seconded by Amelia. Do we have a roll call vote?
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Okay, we have meeting minutes on 12/21 and January 4th of 2024 draft meeting minutes. Does anybody have any suggested revisions? Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the January 4th, 2024 meeting minutes as the planning board's minutes, seconded by Amelia. We can have a roll call vote, please.
This is Raisa speaking. Michael Capuano.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Debbie, did you vote?
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
We have meeting minutes. So the only other item I believe on the agenda tonight is a very preliminary introduction of an idea that has been kind of bandied around for the last year or so that is still in the process of being kind of discussed with a little bit more formality. But I will offer the floor to Amelia if she wants to give a broad overview of the thought of the planning board committee or subcommittee, and maybe a brief update on kind of where we're at with the contemplation of that. If you want to take the floor, Amelia, I'm offering it to you. I didn't mean
Sure.
to say no.
Nope. Just let me know if I'm at the right level of detail for what you would hope to cover in this conversation, please, Mr. Chair. So we've been discussing the idea of having forming a subcommittee to focus on some of the more policy-oriented or recommendation-oriented topics that are within the purview of this board, but fall outside of the sort of traditional rhythm of our specific cases. The idea, I think tentatively, is that this would cover things such as modifications to our amendment recommendations to the City Council's Land Use Committee, where we occasionally sort of have something come before us and think that a more involved rewrite would be appropriate, or where there is a specific recommendation that we want to put in our comments to the Land Use Committee that requires some action items or follow-up, that it may be a forum for those types of discussions. It may become a forum for interfacing further with staff on other planning efforts that are currently underway with the planning department and OSPCD, and may become a forum for us to discuss modifications to the ordinance that we, as people who are often sort of seeing where the policy meets individual projects, might be able to work out some kinks or otherwise improve upon processes or language for clarifications or other things that we sort of from our unique position think could be improved upon. So those are the types of things that we're thinking the subcommittee would, in theory, be tasked with addressing. I think the structure of it is still very open-ended as to whether it is a single subcommittee or sort of broken into more topic focus areas. But this is something that we've raised with staff for consideration on logistics, and wanted to raise as a larger group as part of the general meeting to assess interest and discuss any initial feedback or comments. Mike, how is that?
I think that was great. That's exactly what we've discussed over the last period of months, and with a little bit more intensity over the last couple of weeks. I think this was born out in part of an intent to have this board be a little bit more proactive in the way that we're involved in the planning process and decisions of the city, while also being, by the way, I would kind of classify it as reactive. We have cases that are presented to us and plans that are presented to us and amendments that are presented to us by others, and then we go about our duties with those. This would be a way for us to, because we're all engaged in the community, we all have particular interests and different areas of both expertise and involvement. And this is a way potentially for those of us who want to get kind of more involved and have the planning board be more of an active participant in these discussions, to be able to do that. Because one of the things that came up in these discussions is the fact that the city council can put forward amendments that are policy based to the zoning code. The administration can do the same, as can 10 registered voters, but so can the planning board. And we haven't done that before. And the thing that kind of triggered my memories, and Amelia brought it up kind of as she began her explanation of where we're going, my thought was the MBTA Communities Act votes that we took, where we had some pretty robust discussion on each of the proposed amendments. And we as a board made recommendations to the land use committee that were beyond just we recommend adoption. It was we recommend adoption, but we would also hope that the city council, the administration consider modifying it or supplementing it with X, Y, and Z, because we think it would further the goals of this while mitigating some of the concerns that people had about it. Nobody has any obligation to take those recommendations and run with them. But if we as a planning board, and if this potential committee or subcommittee says, oh, okay, we have made a recommendation to the city council to do X in a recommendation for an ordinance change, and they've elected for whatever reason not to do that, we can then say, we've made this recommendation, we think this is a good idea, we would like to put this up for public discussion. we have the opportunity to do that. And I think the proper way to do that is to go through a planning board vote. And we think that one of the ways to achieve this kind of in an administrative way is to have a subcommittee or a committee have the underlying discussions, take an underlying vote to make a broader recommendation with a detailed recommendation to the planning board as a whole, who can then decide through a vote on our own to advance it to a joint hearing. So that's kind of where this started. Is I think we're all, or at least both Amelia and I, we're both a little frustrated with some lack of movement and clarity on some aspects of the code, and hoping that we could make some headway in doing something as a body. Amelia, do you think I kind of characterized where our heads were at?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that from time to time, we've discussed as a board those issues that we might like to take a deeper dive into, and where we just haven't had the time or bandwidth in our regular meetings to take those up. So also a forum for working a little bit deeper into some of those issues when appropriate.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. We Amelia and I, a week or two ago, had a meeting with Risa and with Sarah Lewis on kind of the details of what this might look like, certain things that may or may not be feasible. And we're kind of waiting to hear back on some of the discussions that we had, which I thought was a very productive and helpful conversation that we had. Took about an hour, and we got into some really interesting aspects of kind of planning board policy and planning policy and things like that. So it's still very much in a state of development with some answers that I think we need from the law department and things like that. But presuming something like this would go forward in some capacity, we obviously wanted to raise it. Amelia wanted to raise it specifically with all of you to give you an idea. This is kind of what we're thinking. Do people think this is a crackpot idea? Are you supportive? Are you interested in getting involved? I don't think that this is going to be one of those weekly things. It might be ad hoc. It might be a standing monthly thing. I think it's kind of all still in development, but would love to hear your thoughts on this idea. Yeah, Luke.
Thanks. I really like the idea. I have a few thoughts and questions, but it's all from the perspective of thinking this seems, promising. One is, have you all thought about, is this a subcommittee of the whole, or literally a subcommittee and just a subset of us would participate in them?
I think we weren't sure how it was going to be structured. Amelia did mention that we weren't sure if it was going to be one subcommittee that handled everything, or multiple subcommittees that specialized for people who were interested in particular aspects of planning and zoning, like the transportation and mobility focused stuff, or more of the sustainability and climate based stuff. So we're not sure. And we're also not sure if something like what you just said, Luke, if it could be kind of fluid. Could it be a committee of the whole? Could I join a subcommittee that's discussing something that's of particular interest to me that month? I think we're not sure as to the logistics quite yet, because it's still in development.
For what it's worth, my hope or intention was that we will find a structure that would allow people where we could set the agenda for, say, a monthly meeting ahead of time, and allow people who are interested in participating in discussion on that topic to join, without making it another standing obligation for everyone, for those who might not be interested in a given topic. I'm not sure functionally how that would work. I think as Mike has said, we still need to sort it out, but in my mind, I was hoping it could be open to all who were interested in a topic without requiring attendance all of the time from anyone.
honestly, as a nerd procedure question, I would have is I don't know if a committee of the whole would require a quorum of the entire board to make it effectively another meeting for everybody. So that's something that we would have to look into as to if this were to go forward, what would it look like? What would the structure be? And what are the obligations?
That's great. And by the way, for the short list of questions and ideas I have here, they're all in the spirit of we don't need to fully be answered now because I get that this is all still information. And I think the reason my mind even went to the possibility of subcommittee of the whole is because when I was on Cambridge School Committee, at least one of our subcommittees was, I think it was a budget subcommittee, and it was always a subcommittee of the whole. And I think it ended up being that case because all the members wanted to go to all those meetings because they felt important enough. And I just wonder if especially because this would be the only subcommittee, everybody's just going to want to be on it because it sounds interesting. So maybe we partially just see what the interest is. And I guess I'll just say.
Oh, look, I was just going to say, there is an avenue by which, because it's happened before at the land use committee, where discrete meetings can be called as committees of the whole. It doesn't have to be a committee of the whole for all meetings. It can be done for individual meetings. And Risa has reminded me to remind all of you that in whatever form it takes, any committee or subcommittee would have to have a quorum of 3 under state law.
That's helpful, yeah. The next thought question is very related to this, is just because by our purview, we can recommend policy changes. It did occur to me, why do we need a subcommittee for this instead of just having policy discussions on some of our regular meeting agendas? Now, maybe the thought is our meetings are just too long and we really do need to carve out extra space. Maybe that's just the answer.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's we're going to have 6 cases, 4 of them are going to be incredibly involved. And then we're going to try to tack on some other business. We're talking about going back into the, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 11:30 meetings that with a bane of everybody's existence for many, many years before we implemented some of the new policies and procedures. Or procedures and policies and rules. I don't know how we've decided to rephrase what we have.
Yeah. My final thing is Amelia, in some of the examples you gave for how this subcommittee could be useful, they basically all sounded very policy focused, except one, and I think you even sort of said this, like example was city staff having some more space to give us updates on planning efforts underway. And so I'm just curious how narrowly the two of you are thinking on this really is policy or policy plus, and yeah.
If I may, I think I was reading some notes off of a list developed going into the conversation with Risa and Director Lewis. And I think over the course of that conversation, we established that sort of more regular updates on planning efforts were something that, while Mike and I have an interest in being more plugged into, was probably best handled in our course of regular meetings. So it may be appropriate to sort of back that idea out of the committee topic if that aligns with Michael and Risa's understanding coming out of that conversation as well.
Yeah, that was kind of my recollection as to how we consolidated that discussion. I think that if the committee is handling something of a particular level of expertise, or an amendment that would handle or call for the expertise of a particular member of city staff, we had discussed obviously having members of the appropriate city staff be present at those committee meetings for those discrete items, as opposed to kind of a broader overview of, for example, the Davis Square neighborhood plan.
So the Davis Square neighborhood plan might be something that we want to ask for more regular updates on in the course of regular meetings, but something like, I'm making this up, this is not a specific thing, a new density incentive for very sustainable development, because we know the new energy code basically lapped the existing density bonus for sustainable residential development. That's something that staff is already at work on, I think. So that might be something that we would take up as a policy topic, but where it would be appropriate to have discussion in the committee forum with the person who's already working on that. And maybe the answer is planning board shouldn't worry about this because staff's already 90% of the way there. And maybe the answer is it's a really early conversation and we have some ideas that we can bring to the table about it. As just one example.
Super helpful. All makes sense to me. Yeah. That's all for me. Thanks.
Yeah, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be pretty quick because I think a lot of my detailed questions would come kind of on the heels of more structure to this. But you know, at a high level, as one member, I'm very supportive of this. I think being a bit more proactive would go a long way. I think we're going through a big transformative era of Somerville, and I think being able to kind of weigh in on things instead of reacting to the applications as they come could be very valuable. So for what it's worth, I definitely would be supportive.
I think you're on mute,
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Debbie, yeah.
Just to tail on with Michael, I'm also generally supportive of the proposal. I think it is, oftentimes when we're sitting here in these cases and you sort of lament, that we're sort of tied by what might be existing now, or there might be a better way. So I think it's probably good conversations to be having. I was just curious, just procedurally, and I appreciate we're kind of in the infancy of this, but what kind of is the end product if we have sort of the policy discussion, so there's then able to be public testimony about our proposal, and then what happens at that point? Is it presented as a recommendation to the land use committee? Is it presented higher up at the executive level in terms of seeing how change happens then once we've put in some sort of policy recommendation?
So one of the things that we had discussed, and I'm not sure exactly where it landed, is the difference between a public meeting and public testimony. Is having these internal discussions on particular initiatives by members of the committee. We could invite members of the public to speak, but it wouldn't be a hearing per se. We would always remind members of the public that they would have an opportunity to testify if and when this went to a joint hearing. But yes, it would kind of be involving as many people as we could along the way while it comes maybe out of committee to the full board as a recommendation to whomever, and then making sure that the appropriate people are present to both testify if needed and make expert presentations. Is that kind of where you're going on that? I'm not sure I fully understood.
Yeah, I think it was more than what happens then with the recommendation. I mean, some of this is probably not my lack of knowledge of sort of the process and how we then could affect change in something, if we're looking to make a recommendation for change.
I think it will, if I may, I think it would depend a lot on what the topic at hand was and whether it was something that where the end goal was a specific text amendment or map change to the ordinance, because we could then go through the normal process, like in the same way that when we attend joint hearings, there are proposals being put forward that we are then providing recommendations on. It would be our proposal being put forward in that forum, and it would go through the same approval process of us hopefully choosing to recommend our proposal, I suppose, and then having the land use committee proceed down the path of taking a vote and moving that forward. There may be, I can imagine that there might be other topics where it is a softer recommendation that doesn't rise to the level of a text ordinance, but maybe is another example that came up in the meeting is refining some of our language around standard conditions. So maybe it's a discussion of standard condition language, and then it's something that simply lives with the planning department as part of, you know, planning board standard documents, and it's not something that the end deliverable is a text amendment, but is rather just that we've all aligned around the standard condition language around bike lanes or what have you.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this that they'd like to bring up? Because obviously this is still very much in the works, but we wanted to make sure that after what I think was a very productive meeting with Sarah and Risa and Amelia, that we obviously raise it with all of you to give you insight as to kind of what we might be thinking and see if we've got support by you, our colleagues, and see where we can go with it. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add at this time, or should we make this a very brief meeting? Okay. Thank you all for the discussion. We'll obviously keep you updated as we figure out more and as we work towards making this a reality. Obviously, you're going to include all of you in trying to figure out, you know, how it's going to work, who's going to be involved in what, and all that. So this is certainly not my intent to have this be a top-down thing. Yeah, Michael.
I'm sorry, I just have one additional question. I know that there is some very timely zoning policy that might be snaking its way through, like, as we speak. Do we know what the timeline might be for this subcommittee?
Probably not before that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I think there are a few things that Member McNeely might be alluding to there, but I would ask, separate from the discussion of the subcommittee, if we could, Risa, try to get, with the chair's approval, updates from staff on the Davis Square neighborhood plan and the revised FAB zoning initiative somewhere on our radar for the next couple of meetings, if time permits. I think that those, in the spirit of the conversation we had, having updates on the status of those sooner rather than later, I think would be really wonderful if the chair agrees and if staff has the time to lay them out for us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. The sooner we can be kind of made aware of developments that are coming down the pike and that we're going to have to make a recommendation or a vote on, I think the better. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, and maybe to dovetail onto that, I don't know if this is something that staff would be comfortable with presenting, but also understanding what maybe the long-term pipeline looks like. For example, maybe Gilman Square, you know, revitalization review isn't something that staff intends to address in the next, you know, 1 or 2 months, but maybe it's something that they're going to be looking at in, say, the winter. Being able to see a little bit down the road too, I think would be helpful as well. So both getting a zoomed in, you know, detailed view of a specific initiative, and then also maybe what the long-term planning cycle looks like. I think that would be something interesting to me, at least, if possible.
Yeah. Well, anybody else? Okay. Seeing none at 6:30 p.m. The chair moves to adjourn. Seconded by Amelia. Risa, please call the roll.
Michael Capuano,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Hi.
Debbie Howard Easton,
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Awesome. At 6:31 p.m., the planning board is adjourned, and I will see you all in a few weeks.
Aye.
Have a nice night.
Warm, folks.
Bye-bye. Yeah, absolutely.